that's gone on down there in that part of the part of the state. So I think to start things off, I'm going to turn it over to the commissioner here to go ahead and give some opening remarks, and then we'll get into the presentation for today and cover the NOFA. So, Commissioner, if you want to go ahead and start us off.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. I'm going to be brief so we can get right to it. But to Travis's point, I am from London, Kentucky, about 5 miles from where the tornado hit, and I am no longer messing with the weather. So if they put out severe thunderstorm warnings, we're going to make a change. So appreciate your all's understanding on that. Great group in the meeting today. I see we've got a full house from what I was expecting. Chestnut Ridge is a really exciting opportunity. We'll talk about some differences potentially in the utility work and construction work that's going on up there on site now compared to the Skyview project in Perry County, which is also going really well. And we appreciate our partners that are up there on the ground now, but we're learning a lot about how this process works. And I think that's just going to make things go even more smoothly at Chestnut Ridge. And Judge Jeff Dobson is on the call, County Judge Executive from Knott County, and I'd like him to just say a couple words before we turn it back over to Travis for the presentation.
Hey, Commissioner, I appreciate you organizing this meeting and getting the folks online here. We're actually out here at Chestnut Ridge today. You see, looks like about 6 homes under roof, a couple more that's framed up, ready for trusses to be set, maybe 12, 15 more footers foundations that have been poured that is ready to move. But, it's an exciting opportunity for county, for people. It gives them a new opportunity in safety out of harm's way of the floodwaters that we had witnessed back in 22. Here it is, lo and behold, in 25, February of 25, we were hit again. Some of the folks that really did not want to leave their homes at that time of 22, that fixed back or moved maybe another mobile home, built back in their same old location, were flooded again. We had nearly 200 sign up for the buyout in 22. We've had an additional 120 plus sign up for the buyout here in 25. And, these people they're needing a place to go. And I think it's a really good opportunity to expand Chestnut Ridge. I know the foundation property that has been developed, built on now, and then the Commonwealth property that we're expanding the infrastructure out into, the new homes, the opportunities that's going to be there. I think it's a great opportunity for people, and they're going to have to take advantage of this opportunity. We still have a few people that's still living in the Commonwealth Housing Program, which is the campers that have not been able to transition into long-term comfortable housing yet. But they do have hope now because of Chestnut Ridge and the builders that came together and the teamwork that the state and nonprofits have came together. So we appreciate everything that everyone's put into this. And it's a sad situation with the 25 flood that followed up after 22. But on the flip side of things, it just shows people that this is going to happen again, and it's not that 1,000-year flood that we expected and that came in 22 that was never going to happen again. I think this is going to happen more often. You take the tornadoes out in London and Laurel County and Pulaski County. It just you can't predict the weather. You can't control the weather. It's going to continue to come. So we're just glad we got this opportunity to expand along with surrounding counties to do these high ground projects. And, without these, where would our people be? Where would they have a chance to go? There's no other options. So we appreciate. We want to invite everyone out to take a look at these if they get an opportunity to come and see what a blessing it is. And it's by far going to be the greatest impact to Knott County that's ever happened. And we owe it all to all the glory to God, but we, these nonprofits and the state, the commitment that Governor Beshear and Congressman Rogers and McConnell and the commissioner and his staff have committed to these projects, they're going through with, and it's greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Judge. We appreciate you and all the work that you do for your constituents, your citizens down there. Know it's been a tough few years, but they got a good leader there in Knott County, and we look forward to working with you. Travis, go ahead and get us going. Travis, you're on mute.
Oh, can everybody see the screen okay now? With the slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and start off. Thank you for the remarks. So for today's forum, we ask that everybody please remain on mute, as Dana mentioned at the beginning. Throughout this formal presentation, we are going to post this on our website. So we want to try to keep it moving. We want to try to keep it moving forward. So however, we do want questions at the end, and we encourage those to be put into the chat, and that way then we can respond to those, because we will have, just like we did on the previous one with Skyview, we will have a follow-up Q&A that we post on our website with responses to these questions. All participants should put their questions in the chat. We will try to address some questions at the end. I can't guarantee that we'll be able to get to all of them. We want to be aware of everybody's time. We did commit to this to being an hour. We want to be aware of everybody's time so that we can allow us to each move on. And we will get those posted on our website. We anticipate having the recording of this on our website by the end of the week. We anticipate then having responses to the Q&A posted on our website, hopefully by the close of next week. And if anybody has questions that they want to submit, but they don't get them into the chat, there is an email address down there, dlg.dr@ky.gov. Please feel free to submit any questions at any time to that email address, and we'll get those included in the Q&A. All right, so you got to meet the commissioner, Matt Sawyers, for the Department for Local Government. My name is Travis Weber. I'm the branch manager for Housing and Community Projects here at DLG, and along with us as well, with our partners at FAHI, is going to be Jacob Wolf, and he'll provide some information and processes regarding kind of the home buyer piece specifically to this. As we get a little bit further on in the presentation. All right. Little background. July 29th, 2022, presidentially declared disaster from the 2022 flooding event that took place that month. This event impacted 20 of our 120 counties in Kentucky. In May of 2023, HUD announced that Kentucky would receive almost $300 million to aid in the long-term recovery and mitigation efforts from these flood events. Those funds were sent to the Kentucky Department for Local Government at DLG, which is where many of you that have possibly worked with our office or with the Community Development Block Grant Program for the state and small cities. It's the same office, and it's the same folks that work with that program. So that's so HUD, when they award that money, that comes to where the state and small cities CDBG program money comes. DLG launched in February of 24, following approval of the Kentucky action plan that had to be submitted to HUD in order to obtain access to these funds. DLG made available approximately over $170 million to be put in towards housing and reconstruction activities in East Kentucky tied to the 22 flooding. Those housing activities included both single family and multifamily housing recovery efforts. All right. What is CDBG-DR? So as I mentioned before, many of you are probably familiar with the regular CDBG program, the State and Small Cities program that comes to DLG. However, with the CDBG-DR program, there are some similar overlapping points to that. However, there are some different nuances. Congress approves CDBG-DR, so Congress approves the appropriation for the CDBG-DR funding. That money then goes to HUD. HUD then calculates and announces the allocations to the different recipients based off their formula. You can see this in the Federal Register that HUD puts out when they announce those recipients, and then they ultimately make those award announcements to the different states and communities that were impacted. Used to be disaster recovery funds predominantly went to state and small cities programs. However, in the last couple years, HUD has made additional DR announcements and awards to cities and county governments, especially in the hardest hit areas down in Florida as well as New Jersey. State and local governments will then administer these programs. So when it says state and local governments, many of you on here may be thinking to yourselves, I'm not a state or a local government. In that case, when it goes through a local government, which is a traditional model under the State and Small Cities program with CDBG, that local government is held as the responsible entity. When the state, so similar to like what's going on at the Skyview site location, when the state is working directly with a developer, the state assumes that responsible entity. So that developer is working with the state, not as a subrecipient, but as a developer, which is very different. When a local government is working with these programs, they're working with these programs as a subrecipient, and then they will partner with that developer. So then, as you can see with these DR funds, those funds will then be distributed to those subrecipients or grantees as they go, as we make awards. Sorry, I just got a little technology help there, actually. I guess I'm not sure that everybody could actually see my screen the way I thought they were. So who's eligible for these funds? So keep in mind, CDBG funds must serve a low to moderate income households. Those households that are at 80% or less of area median income. Those calculations can be found at our DLG website for disaster recovery. Those resources are available. Many of you are probably familiar with what that means and working with regular CDBG programs. One thing I'll bring your attention to, though, with the CDBG-DR program is you can see by the chart here, so the Knott County median family income for a family of four is $50,800. Or the Knott family median income is $50,800. If you're 80% of area median income, I think that calculation got wrong there. So the Knott County family median income would be $50,800 if you're 80% or less. Keep in mind, DLG was able to secure a waiver request from HUD that allows us for those counties and communities like Knott County, where the 80% of area median income may be less than what is the statewide 80% area median income, we can use the statewide area median income to qualify those folks. And you can see that change there from where the statewide area median income, that household for a family of four, is greater than what it is for Knott County. Subsidy limits, just like with the Skyview, and just like with all of our other housing programs, we will allow up to $200,000 per unit. This also includes the developer fee that you will build into that project. Chestnut Ridge, a little information on Chestnut Ridge. Chestnut Ridge was one of the original 7 identified high ground sites. It spans over 100 acres when fully developed and is expected to include 147 homes. Of course, that's all kind of still can be potentially a little fluid depending upon when we get in there. Some of these lots may not be able to be developed the way that it was intended. Maybe some of it gets possibly altered on the site development. However, right now it's estimated at approximately 147 homes. Goals with this is we want to provide flood survivors with an option to relocate out of the flood-prone areas, get to the higher ground sites, which is what the governor refers to them. We want to build resilient subdivisions and homes, build back better, as the governor has said, that are constructed to withstand these extreme weather and climate conditions, as they just seem to keep hitting Kentucky more and more and more. We want to provide safe and sustainable communities. We're hoping that these communities can become safe and sustainable long-term so that we can get folks out of these flood-prone areas and use this as a model to maybe even implement further down with other site locations in these hardest hit areas. We want to give folks peace of mind during extreme weather events. The governor has said it over and over again that we want folks not to have to worry about when that next rain is coming. We want folks to not have to worry about what they're going to do, where their loved ones are at. That's why we want to give them that peace of mind during these extreme weather events. Site location, for those folks that are familiar, where in Knott County with where the Sportsplex is, this site is adjacent to that Sportsplex. I believe it's pronounced, is it Leburn, Kentucky, which is where the Sportsplex is located outside of Hindman. This will include both rental and we will have single-family units for sale. So different developers, we're going to get into kind of some of this as we go forward in the presentation. We are running 2 concurrent NOFAs. They are separate NOFAs. If you want to apply for rental units, you need to apply under the rental NOFA. If you want to apply for single-family home ownership and you are the same entity, you need to apply in both areas. That is not combined into one. We anticipate that hopefully these will combine several funding sources. Several different funding sources have already gone into the site development at Chestnut Ridge to install that infrastructure. We are really taking a lot of the development component away from the developer, where the state has taken on the responsibility of building out the infrastructure, securing the site location, grading, site prep. A lot of that we're taking on ourselves in order to get that prep so that when folks and developers come into the picture, they're really focusing on building in a way that they've never had to just focus on that before. Resilient and sustainable homes. We want these, we do have green and resilient building standards that have to be implemented. We also have, and we'll talk about what those building standards are more specifically, but we want these homes to be a home for a long time for folks. We look at this as an option for a state-of-the-art subdivision down the line. All right. Who our partners are? So in order to get this completed for CDBG-DR, single-family home ownership, keep in mind this is different than the rental. We'll touch on that here. Roles with DLG. CDBG-DR grantees will manage all the draws that come in. Or CDBG-DR, we will manage the grantees. So our recipients, our developers, those are the folks that DLG will work with. We will manage the draws, we'll manage long-term compliance on these units, and we will also track reporting requirements. So we have a lot of reporting requirements for HUD on these programs, and we will work with you all as well as FAHI, as I'll get into here in just a little bit. DLG will manage the NOFA, including the selection and scoring. So we're going to show you what that scoring looks like. If you've not seen it in the NOFA already, we've got a slide for that. So we will manage that aspect of this. In addition, we will provide oversight to the developer to ensure that there is compliance and that the projects are moving forward. Now, you may be wondering, how are you going to do that from Frankfort? And that's why we have our partnership with the FAHI folks. So FAHI is going to assist, and they're going to be located in Knott County. They're located in all of the Eastern Kentucky disaster hit counties. They're going to have a presence in helping you work as the developer in getting your units constructed, as well as monitoring for federal cross-cutting regulations. We'll touch on what those are exactly shortly. They're going to handle homebuyer intake and eligibility. So again, as I've said before, we're asking you to build homes more than we're asking you to be a developer almost. What that means is that FAHI is going to coordinate even the aspect of finding eligible home buyers for you. That doesn't mean that if you are a developer and you maintain an ongoing pipeline of potential home buyers that are looking to move into one of these units at Chestnut Ridge, that you couldn't engage that home buyer. But we ask that you refer them to FAHI. Biggest reason being is we want to keep this uniform. We want to keep this process streamlined and consistent because we are held responsible with HUD in order to monitor, track all of those individuals that receive assistance, especially when it comes to duplication of benefit, which is a totally different aspect that many of you may not be familiar with or have had to do on any of your other funding programs. FAHI will aid in the underwriting of the homebuyer application to determine subsidy eligibility. This is why it's essential that you get them over, because we have our own underwriting and setup forms that we need to have each potential DR recipient go through, each survivor. It's essential to get that over to the FAHI folks so that they can make sure what level of subsidy that homebuyer could be eligible for. Many of our folks are going to be receiving, or if they have not received yet, they're going to be receiving buyout money from one of the disaster relief funds, or possibly insurance money. Many of them will be bringing insurance money. That all counts towards your duplication of benefit. All the while, that's all the more reason important why we have to ensure that those folks are going through the proper channels to be vetted and reviewed for eligibility. FAHI will provide compliance with Davis-Bacon, so these projects will incorporate Davis-Bacon into them because of the number of units being built. They will provide long-term compliance and loan servicing on these ultimate loans. So the developer, as we shift to that nonprofit developer role, you will enter into that loan agreement with the home buyer. However, that loan then will be serviced by FAHI. The developer, you will also be constructing homes. As I've mentioned, we're asking you to construct, pretty much leaving it there. We're not, site development taken care of, acquisition of property, they're being transferred to you at no fee. Eligibility of potential home buyer also will be tracked and handled by FAHI. So what we're asking you to do is to help us get these homes built. You will also help with support FAHI in that homebuyer outreach. As I mentioned, many of you may have those channels developed already, and we will want to tap into that so that we can make sure we get those home buyers to the right place they need to be. Rental. So this is a little bit different than those folks that may have seen the Skyview one before on the rental. We anticipate that same roles for DLG, pretty much, not much different. Obviously, the one difference here is that we'll have to do annual monitoring of occupancy and affordability. That's a little bit different than the home ownership side that many of you get on your traditional multifamily type projects. FAHI will support these developers with Davis-Bacon. FAHI will aid in marketing and outreach for renters. However, keep in mind, while some of those renters are probably, and we hope, going to go through the Housing Can't Wait intake process, which is what FAHI has set up, and you've seen that blasted out there in many different areas in the East. We want that ultimately we may have to refer these. We're going to have to refer these folks onto the property management companies that are going to be working on these site locations. So keep in mind there will be coordination with FAHI on the development side as well as your property management side in order to secure eligible renters that may be looking to rent some of these units here at Chestnut Ridge. Nonprofit developers, we hope that you will construct homes to meet codes and specifications detailed in the NOFA. We want you to operate these rentals. You can so the nonprofit developer can choose to operate these rentals, or possibly they could be turned over to a long-term owner. Keep in mind, All of the restrictions that go with those properties will be transferred no matter who the owner of that property is. That's all to ensure rent and occupancy compliance for the affordability period. All right. Timeline. So where we are, we put the NOFA out on May 1st. Today is the virtual session. We would like to have a site visit actually on site here, hopefully with the weather permitting in the very near future. We want to give folks a chance to see the site, go to the site, get some ideas on what they would like to do if they plan on responding. Deadline for questions. So if you have questions that you want to come into that email address that we threw up on the screen at the beginning, and we'll put it back up at the end. That deadline is June 5th. DLG will post responses to those questions by no later than June 9th on our website with an application due date of June 19th. We're going to give you a fast turnaround on this. I know that this is not typical for a NOFA response. We're trying to shave about 60 days off this process here, but we're looking at hopefully a response and award announcements come July 17th. With anticipated, for those projects that are selected, anticipated funding agreement execution September 2nd and construction commencement as early as September 15th. So all that saying and leading into construction completed on the beginning units come December 31st or December 15th of 25, ultimate project completion December 31st of 27. All right, what is Chestnut Ridge? Chestnut Ridge is a approximate 100-acre site that will accommodate up to approximately 147 homes. The state has done a lot in terms of investment in order to make this site buildable and buildable instantly for our developers. That includes installation of roads, streets, curbs, sidewalks, and gutters up there. This will include also the main water and sewer lines, along with electricity and broadband will be installed on site. This all to be done when the work is ultimately completed, all of these utilities then will be turned over to the respective utility companies and the Knott County Fiscal Court, which will own and maintain these utilities. You will see in Exhibit 2A and 2B of the NOFA a copy of the subdivision plat and site plans. On my next slides here, you will see this is the proposed site plan and site work, area 1 and 2, that will be up there. You can see on the next slide that as we drill down a little bit closer, this is kind of a sample of what some of those lots will look like. Here again is the overall site plan, for areas 1 and 2. And then the next is what the lots will look like as you drill down closer into that site plan. The sites that you're looking at there, these lots, this is what you'll find in area 1 identified in the previous slide. You can probably see where those make out. But yes, that is considered area 1. All right. Who's eligible to apply? Eligibility for application is reserved for 501c3 and 501c4 tax-exempt organizations. These organizations must have a board that meets regularly in accordance with its bylaws, and that organization has to be in good standing with the Kentucky Secretary of State. In addition to that requirement, as you will find in Section 5.1 of the NOFA, these organizations must have been in operation for at least 12 months, must demonstrate a financial capacity and experience to work on projects like this, must demonstrate that the project is feasible, and be active, have active registration in sam.gov. I will say that this has been a little bit of a challenge for some of our partners on the DR, is the registration in sam.gov and making sure that you have the correct organization registered in sam.gov. Some developers may not be applying or serving as the developer in this. So therefore, I encourage you to make sure that whatever the organization is that is applying and will be the recipient, they must be the organization that is registered in SAM.gov. Those organizations cannot be debarred. They must be delinquent. They must not be delinquent on taxes, and they must have not any ongoing, and they must disclose any pending legal action that is currently there. Applicants, you will apply for a minimum of 5 units with the maximum number to be awarded will be those that have been identified to be completed within a 24-month period. So as you can see from that December to that 25 to December of 27 timeline, that's the number that will be awarded. I will say that depending upon what your application looks like, DLG does reserve the right, based on that scoring, to modify any potential requests that come in as part of the application. The maximum amount that would be awarded is $200,000 per unit for a unit to be constructed at Chestnut. That is for a unit that is a home ownership or rental unit. And all of those units, whenever they have DR money invested in them, must meet the low to moderate income national objective. All lots, as I mentioned, will be conveyed to the developer at no cost to the developer. Those lots are currently owned by the state of Kentucky with the finance cabinet. And we will have a process as we meet with each recipient that is selected in the conveyance of those lots, and that will also include the finance cabinet and your legal representation too. All right. The CDBG award, while it is eligible to be reimbursed, CDBG funds are not scheduled to be reimbursed. They are to pay for actual costs that are incurred. So architectural and engineering fees, those will be paid for. We anticipate our developers submitting invoices through FAHI as the administrator on the project. The FAHI will gather those invoices and submit those pay requests to us. It will not be for a reimbursement. It will be for actual cost. On-site development and infrastructure, of course, we're talking about the on-site being on-site to the lots that you have been transferred. Construction hard costs, those costs are eligible. Reasonable professional fees. So any professional fees that you have associated and identified in your cost estimates as part of your application are eligible, but they must be reasonable, and it must be shown a cost reasonableness as part of those. We can pay for the developer fee on these projects, and that's discussed as well in the NOFA. Any cost, please note, any cost incurred prior to the execution of the funding agreement are not eligible for reimbursement or to be covered by the DR funding. All right, DLG award to developer will be as a form of a forgivable, no payment, zero interest loan. That will be secured with a mortgage and will be released as those units are sold. Affordability restrictions on the units will be secured by a covenant. There will be no covenants on the single-family home ownership units. Again, that is just on the rental. It is important to note that the conveyance document will include a reverter clause. This reverter clause could be triggered, could be triggered by not meeting the compliance or national objective or scope of the funding agreement with the recipient. Keep in mind, this will revert the ownership of the land and the improvements back to the state if the project is not on schedule or being completed as described in the agreement. All right. DLG will award funds to a developer as a loan with terms to be for the rental projects. This will be awarded on a loan with terms to be determined upon project and other financing requirements as reviewed in your response to the NOFA. The loan will be secured with a mortgage on the development of the site. Different from the home ownership, there will be a covenant here on these. It will be for rental and occupancy. Similar instrument will be recorded on the site to ensure compliance with the affordability requirements, and we'll get into those here in just a couple minutes. The conveyance document will include, just like on the home ownership, a reverter clause to where any any type of work, any type of action, or any type of concerns that could be on here with non-compliance could trigger that property to be reverted back to the Commonwealth in order to ensure that a national objective is met and to proceed with the state's investment. Okay. All units. So this is important to note. All units must be one height and story. Only one unit per lot will be constructed. Keep in mind these units must meet the Kentucky Housing Corporation's construction guidelines, that minimum design standards for new construction of single-family dwelling units. All units must comply with the minimum requirements and will be inspected at various stages. So each of these units will be inspected just like on a traditional project, based on the information from those inspections. That's when the project will then submit any type of change orders or requests for payments. That will be in coordination with FAHI as well. Equitable design requirements. No variation in design or amenities is allowed based on the proposed buyer's income. The units are constructed as proposed by the developer as part of their approved plans. So each of these developers have approved plans that meet KHC's minimum design standards. Those units will then be constructed on site. They must meet HUD's green and resilient building standards as identified in the NOFA. You can find those more specifically as well in the Federal Register 6393-N-01. I will add for this site, application plans that include in-unit wiring for high-speed internet will receive an additional 5 points. So we're giving a bonus for the broadband. We want the broadband units coming into the fold. All right, home ownership projects. When it comes to accessibility, what does that look like? Developers must make those units accessible upon request by consulting with prospective buyers. Accessible units must meet the requirements of 24 CFR Part 8 and adhere to the UFAS requirements. Units for home buyers that are 62 years of age or greater, at least one bathroom must have an accessible shower with grab bar. So keep that in mind as FAHI is lining you up with the folks that are going to be building your units, or that you're building your units. Maybe you keep those available. The cost of accessibility modifications can be included in the unit development cost. So if you are proposing any type of accessibility modifications, those are eligible to be included in the project cost. Multifamily housing. So while we don't envision this being a multifamily, multi-story structure type development, we do anticipate it being a rental, and by multifamily we mean multiple lots being built by one developer on their sites for rental. Keep in mind for accessibility purposes that 5% of these units, or at least one unit, whichever is greater, must be accessible to persons with mobility. An additional 2% must be accessible, or at least one unit, whichever is greater, must be accessible for persons with hearing or visual impairments and disabilities. Accessible units must be constructed in accordance with UFAS requirements, as mentioned above before. For projects involving folks that are the households that have folks aged 62 years or older, at least one bathroom must have an accessible shower with grab bar. Okay. Warranty requirements on the unit from the developer is required on home ownership to provide a 1-year post-construction warranty period to the home buyer, with an effective date of that warranty being upon sale of the unit. For those that are doing rental, a developer is required to provide a 1-year post-construction warranty period to the property owner with an effective date, if it's different than the developer, with an effective date upon completion of the unit. A formal notification of warranty's expiration must be sent to the property owners every 3 months and 1 month before the expiration date of the warranty. All right, so we talked about FAHI coming in and providing administration and oversight to ensure compliance with DR and federal cross-cutting regulations. You may ask, what are those? So those include Davis-Bacon. So Davis-Bacon is the prevailing wage that is associated with federal projects. As you know, in state dollars, we no longer have a state prevailing wage, but we still have the Davis-Bacon that is relevant for federal dollars when included. Section 3 requirements. This must include training and employment opportunities to lower income residents and contract opportunities to businesses in the project area. So we hope that you as developers will engage local businesses and local contractors and local folks and get them involved in the construction of these units. Contract Work Hours and Safety Standards Act applies to any agreement, any contract in excess of $100,000. Copeland anti-kickback requires that workers be paid weekly, that deductions from workers' pay are permissible, and that contractors maintain and submit weekly payrolls. So this is there, and this all goes into that when you are a developer and you are doing, if you have any questions regarding payrolls, I know it may not seem normal, and I know it may not make sense, and I know it may look a little funny, but there are some requirements with the Davis-Bacon and Copeland anti-kickback term when it comes to payrolls that we've got to ensure for compliance. So if Fahi's asking you to do something that may not be typical on some of your other projects, just keep in mind it's only for the compliance period. All right, Jake, I'm going to throw this next slide over to you to kind of talk about some of the home buyer process. I know some folks are already kind of familiar with this, as the Housing Can't Wait has been out longer than what it was when we did Skyview. But if you want to maybe talk about some highlights of this process and anything that you want to bring to their attention.
Sure. Thanks, Travis. So as Travis mentioned, I'm Jacob Wolf, Director of Disaster Resilience with Fahi. Really quickly, Fahi's role in this whole process, as Travis mentioned before, is working with construction management to coordinate builders, but also working with client management to coordinate intake for this and other higher ground sites in Eastern Kentucky. So I've got several members of my team who are on this call right now. If you've worked with any development projects with CDBG-DR housing, they'll be familiar to you. If you're new to this process, I hope that they become familiar to you over time, but thankful to have them on the call. So really quickly, Travis gave me only one slide to present, but I think it's an important one in the way of how we connect clients, home buyers, with the builders for these sites. So this first step here that you'll see is an easy one for you all because it's going to be something that you submit as part of the NOFA response. But providing Fahi or the state with your proposed lot options, floor plan options, and pricing estimates, particularly total development cost, is important for us in this process because it helps us anticipate the subsidy that is going to be going into the unit as a whole, both to the home buyer and to you as the developer. So something that I think I would like to preface with really quickly, clients who are involved in this process, and I don't know, Travis, that we got really in the weeds with how the financing structure works for clients, but I'll share briefly about this. So clients are going to be expected to have an affordability standard in terms of PITI, principal, interest, tax, and interest that they can afford in the way of a first mortgage. And then program subsidy will come to the home buyer based on what their need is in the way of a soft second mortgage. So if someone is interested in participating in this program and they are a qualified CDBG-DR applicant, we on the Fahi side are going to be looking at eligibility criteria to qualify them and affordability criteria to see if they also can qualify to purchase a home. So the way that process looks for an interested home buyer, you'll hear a lot of talk about Housing Can't Wait. This is our portal that we use and that we share with the public in Eastern Kentucky as a means of getting people connected with our intake pipeline, with our program availability. So interested home buyers would fill out a questionnaire on the Housing Can't Wait website and would get connected with a Fahi case manager. Once we've made an initial determination or assessment that they are interested in participating in a home buyer program, they would fill out an intake form for that specific site, for the specific program, in this case, Chestnut Ridge, and they would be required to submit supporting documentation. There's a lot, I won't get into everything in the way of supporting documentation, but we are looking at things like income, duplication of benefits, flood impact, and a whole slew of other things. So once they do fill out that intake form, we'll start going into a phase of eligibility review. That includes affordability review. So you'll see notes here about homebuyer counseling and about connecting with lending. Our first line of defense is through Just Choice Lending, which is a Fahi division that we connect interested home buyers with someone who's participating in this program. We'll get connected with Just Choice Lending to determine financing options that fit with their payment requirements and that fit. Essentially, this is how we determine what DLG's subsidy will be able to be for that client. So once that anticipated subsidy is determined, FAHI, with that financing information in mind, will complete a final review. We'll make a recommendation and a grant award, we'll call it a grant award determination recommendation to DLG, who will review that award in the form of a setup. And then we'll make a determination on whether or not that client will be awarded and what they can afford. In the midst of that process, we're also going to be working with the clients in terms of what you as the developer have provided in the way of total development cost, what works with that person's budget. Now, I don't think we'll be sharing your total development cost directly with the client, but we will have that in mind as we're looking through what that person's first mortgage, second mortgage in the form of subsidy is going to be able to assist them with. So based on what their budget is, they'll be able to connect with a builder. What we want is to give a certain level of options to the client to be able to connect with all of the builders who are available and selected for this site, for the client to be able to look at plans, options, and to pick one that works for them out of the developer pool. So once that person is approved or denied, if there's any changes to the final agreement documents, anything like that, that would come in at the end of that process, FAHI would send that DLG approved home buyer to the developer who's going to be building that home for them. If the home buyer accepts the award, FAHI sets up the grant signing event with the developer, with FAHI, and with the FAHI as an agent or representative, and then also with the home buyer. And then the developer would begin the construction on the client's home. That could be connecting the client with an already built home. There could be some nuance to that in terms of when the client is available and when that construction starts on that unit. I think at some point that there will be a kind of an overlap when clients will be able to kind of see the unit that's being built for them. And then the home buyer closes on the property with the lender. FAHI submits the draw request to DLG, settlement statement, all that type of stuff that comes in at the time of closing. I'll make a really quick note, and Travis, feel free to elaborate on this if needed. But as the home is being built, those draw requests that Travis alluded to before will be submitted to FAHI for processing. We as FAHI are not going to be paying you as the developer, but what we do in the way of those draw requests is to look at the compliance requirements for Davis-Bacon, wage determinations, all of these federal cross-cutting things that Travis mentioned in the previous slide. Those are things that we're going to look at intervals with the building process so that we can process those draw requests and be sure that you as the builders are staying compliant. Our role is to support you all in compliance there and to review those documents as they're getting submitted. So this is, in a nutshell, what it looks like for a home buyer who's interested in this program. Worth sharing this information just so you all understand how someone would be connected with you as the builder. But this is just a general kind of rough guide. There's a lot more detail to this that I can be happy to answer more questions on the back end, just in terms of what type of documentation we look for and things like that. But otherwise, this is just kind of high level overview of that. So Travis, I'll turn it back over to you. And I don't think I have another slide to present.
Thank you. No, that's it, Jake. You only get one slide. No, that's it. Thank you for that overview. That was great. And yes, Jake is correct. Sorry if I that was confused anybody earlier. The payments will be sent directly to an account identified by the developer. FAHI will just merely be gathering the documentation that's necessary to come in for those requests for payments and reviewing for compliance before they're sent up here to DLG. So that's the aspect that they're going to do, and then DLG will also review that documentation when it's sent in before we then issue any payment out to that developer. Question on payments that may come up that we've had frequently is, well, how often do you pay? The answer to that is we can pay almost any time you need. We do process minimum every 2 weeks. or I'm sorry, we do process, the longest you'd have to wait is 2 weeks. We can process those payments sooner for those payments that are needed. But typically we stay on a 2-week cycle, which seems to work out pretty well with and for any type of contractors that are invoicing or developers. What? Okay. So we talked about then about the affordability period. So the affordability period is defined by the amount of subsidy that is being provided to the home buyer that's left in left in the unit. So you can see from this chart below that depending upon the amount that is provided to the home buyer will be the affordability period that will carry with that home buyer. This is for obviously the home ownership side. There is a different affordability for the rental side, and we'll get into that in just a second here. The developer will enter into that loan agreement and note with the home buyer a mortgage will then be incrementally forgiven over the time period identified by the affordability period. FAHI will continue to assist in the servicing of the loan and monitoring the occupancy of the unit to ensure that the individual, the home buyer that was provided the assistance, is still in that unit and in compliance. All right, rental affordability. So rental is 20 years for all new construction of rental property under the DR program. It's 20 years. This will be enforced through recordation of a rental and occupancy covenant. DLG will continue to track and monitor with those owners of those properties to ensure compliance for the full 20-year term. All right. So you probably have seen this in the NOFA already. This is the scoring criteria that's been identified as part of the review for the NOFA. These projects will be reviewed based on this scoring criteria here. I won't go through this individually. However, I do encourage you to look at it if you haven't already from what was in the NOFA. And please feel free to let us know if you have any questions. Submission requirements, again, all of this is outlined as a checklist in the NOFA, so I'm not going to go through here specifically. If you have any questions about documentation that is not included, or that documentation or seeking clarification on any of this documentation, do let us know. Do not make any assumptions on what these documents are if by chance you are confused or not sure of what that would meet the requirement of, with some of these projects being a little different maybe than what you've normally done in the past. Some things we may need, some things could be different than what you normally would do. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Any incomplete applications or any type or anything that is not clear in the application can result in that application being disqualified and not eligible to be considered for award. So please do not hesitate to reach out or ask any questions on these documents or anything that is found in the NOFA that you would want, and then anything that you'd want to put in your response. Again, here is a link directly to where you can find all the NOFA materials, the Q&A, any amendments to the NOFA will be posted at this link as well. Here on the next slide is that email address that Dana had thrown up in the chat to submit any questions to. That is all I have now. That concludes our presentation for the NOFA. Several folks do have my email address. You can email me as well, and we'll get those questions answered. I do ask that you try to, if you're going to email me directly, please do CC that DLG.DR web email address too, just because I want to make sure that we get those questions, that it's seen, because there's a greater chance that that email address is going to be seen by more people than just me versus if you just email me. So if you can, try to use that email address whenever possible. So, and Commissioner, I think I've seen you pop back on, so I'm going to throw it back over to you real quick. And if you, and maybe say any last things or ask people, then we'll open it up for questions.
I'm good. Thanks, Travis. Go ahead.
Okay. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and I don't see any questions in the chat yet. Does if anybody wants to submit some last questions, we have a few minutes here. We'll take some questions. If not, like I said, you can submit them via that email address, and we will put together a response to every question that comes in.
You might have to open everybody, take them off mute. I don't know if they're self-muted or not.
We were going to try to leave them to the chat.
Chat.
Yeah, but we're trying to, just so we can make. Are there any flood requirements to move into a rental unit? Are you saying require? I guess maybe if Michelle, if you can elaborate on that. If you can elaborate what you mean by there, are you talking about for the survivor that would go into a rental unit, or for the property owner of the rental unit? Right now, Scott will answer this as well. Does the tenant have to be a survivor? Yes, they all need to be survivors. But what I will let you know is anybody that has been impacted. You will notice in that Federal Register, Michelle, that HUD does not clearly define what they consider a survivor to be. So anybody that has been impacted by these events, these flooding events, is a survivor. So keep that in mind. Obviously, some have been much more impacted than others, but yes, they must be impacted primarily as a survivor to be assisted. Scott, we will address that. What is the expected total number of rental units? That's not been defined yet. So that will be reviewed upon submission of the responses to the NOFA. Is it one rental unit per lot, or are attached allowed? Attached are allowed, Scott, and that's why I kind of mentioned a little bit that we may have to change some of that lot makeup that I did flash up there on those maps, because I think that we would like to see some of those duplexes, fourplexes, triplexes. I think we would like to see those because you can keep those at one unit, or you can keep those at one story, and it saves on cost. It allows us to build more units and spread out that money. So absolutely, it does not have to be one unit per lot on the rental the way it was worded in there. I think that's a little confusing. Do you expect a demand for smaller rentals? Yeah, I think so. Jake, do you have any information you want to add to that, maybe in regards to demand for smaller rentals based off some of the families that you've seen come?
Sure. Yeah. And I guess maybe a clarifying question about smaller rentals. So are we looking at, individual single family units for rental? Are we looking at duplexes, triplexes? I think there's a need for all of it. We have seen a lot of people pass through our pipeline who are not necessarily going to qualify for home ownership due to a multitude of reasons. So I think that having those options available in the way of rental units for a variety of different types of situations is going to be helpful for serving our purpose of getting people in housing in Eastern Kentucky.
Thank you. Chris, when determining the affordability period, it is depending on the amount of DR subsidy provided to the home buyer. That's ultimately what determines the affordability, is the assistance to the home buyer. There is the developer subsidy is eligible to cover the gap. So yes, there is both, but that does not affect the affordability. The affordability is based on the assistance to the home buyer. And again, even these questions that we have answered on this right here, we will put this out. We'll put these answers out in writing on the website too.
Hey, Travis.
Yes.
On the rentals, who will be in charge of the oversight, management of these rental properties? Will that be the county, state? How will that work?
No, they'll be all managed. They'll be all owned and managed by a private entity. So that could differ depending upon the developer that's building them, whether or not they have a management arm. That can all be that it will all be different. So just so yeah, it will not fall on the state. It will not fall on the county.
Okay, thank you.
If you are allowing, oh, Seth, nothing that I'm aware of in terms of like an HOA thing up there.
Travis, we've worked on a plan and identified some area of the property to where the rentals mostly can go, especially if they're duplexes, triplexes, working with Transportation Cabinet and the geotech engineers on that, to where that makes most sense, especially if it's kind of a heavier construction anyway, if it is a triplex. So we'll likely recommend those in a specific area of the property.
Okay, all right, thank you. If you're allowing duplexes, triplexes, can you speak? Okay. Does income eligibility for rental tenants go up to 80% of the statewide AMI? Yes, to my understanding, it would. As long as it's just DR, to my understanding, yes, it would. But Julia, we will clarify that. Good question.
Well, we've gone over
Any?
time just by a little bit, but I think this conversation, as we mentioned at the top, is incredibly important, and we want to answer all these questions. So make sure that you're submitting those to the places Travis pointed out earlier. We've got folks on here from the other cabinet agencies under the governor that have developed the property. So, we can get your specific questions answered for the most part, and we can get that information out to everybody. So really looking forward to working with you all on it. Travis, do you have anything to add in closing?
I do not. No, thank you.
Well, really appreciate everyone's time and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it, guys.
Good job.
You like that?
Yeah, it was good. That was informative to me
Did you learn something?
from the meeting. Yeah.
Oh.
You want this closed again?